Hello, everyone. I want to talk today a little bit about your lab practical. What is it, how to prepare for it, and what kinds of questions you might see. So the basic thing you should know about the lab practical is that it is an individual project where you will be showing what you have learned during the lab this semester. So throughout the lab, you're often working in teams and you're working together on something. So this is where you get to show that you knew what you were doing the whole time, and this is a significant part of your grade. So it will be worth 90 points. It is the biggest individual project of your lab grade. Is this one lab practical? So it would be basically like missing 9 days of lab if you didn't do this. So it's a really big deal. You definitely want to make sure that you are there for the lab practical and that you are ready to do well on it. It will be a mixture of both hands-on activities, so things you'll be doing. You'll be doing experiments, and then also some written things. And we'll talk about what that looks like here shortly. This is an individual project again, so you're not going to be working together on this. However, you will be able to use your lab notebooks, and that's an important thing, and we'll talk about how that can be beneficial to you. Okay, so the most important thing you can do to help yourself on the lab practical is to have a lab notebook that is well organized and has what you need in order to succeed. So make sure as we're going through lab that you are writing it in a way so that the you from a couple months from now knows what the you from a couple months ago was doing when they were doing that. It would be good to know which concepts were covered in each lab. So if you see a question, you can easily find in your lab notebook when you had done something like that. And probably most importantly is that you know how to figure out how you did the calculations. So as you do these labs, there are calculations you do as you're doing the lab itself. You need to know how to do those calculations. You need to be able to, when you go back later and look at that, know what you were doing. So please feel free to make any notations, any extra notations that you need to clarify that mainly for yourself. So I do grade these, and you've seen the grades you get on them. But you need to know for yourself what you did so you can look back at it. The lab notebook is a notebook mainly for yourself right now. Some of you have missed a few labs. So for any lab that you missed, you do want to make note of any of the relevant information from that lab so that you can answer the questions for that on the lab practical. There will be some makeup lab options that will account for the fact that you weren't there in terms of getting a grade for that, but the content knowledge you are still responsible for. So feel free to add anything in your lab notebook related to any labs that you missed. Okay, so a little bit about the types of questions you will see on this activity. There'll be what I'm calling hands-on questions. That is something where you're going to be performing a task. So it could be similar to anything that you did in the lab this semester. So it will probably be some portion of an experiment that you did. It won't, any one of these tasks cannot take a very long period of time because you're doing several of them. But you will be asked to do something similar to what you've done already this semester. So that's the hands-on portion. The written portion should be covering things related to any procedures you did. So you could have a question about a procedure. You could be asked to do a calculation similar to what you've done before. So you might be provided with data and then figure out the calculation from that data. You could be asked about any observations that you made. You could be asked about lab safety. So any of those things could be in the written portion. There shouldn't be any surprises here. So everything that you'll be asked is going to be related to something you have already done. Um, so just hopefully that is helpful in feeling more comfortable about it. But again, if you have missed a lab, you are still responsible for knowing anything from that lab that you missed. And I'm going to leave off here with a few things that I would say are particularly important. So just some things to highlight as you're getting ready for this. So we're going to limit the lab practical to labs that were covered before completing the third exam. So the labs we did from the third exam up until the fourth exam will not be on the lab practical. And that's just because we have a limited amount of time, and it gives you some time to get caught up on those, anything from that previous time, if necessary. We talked about different ways of measuring your results. So you want to be aware of each one of these and how they're different. So percent yield, percent recovery, percent error, percent difference. As I mentioned, you might want to, maybe on the very first page of your lab notebook, say this is what these things are. So when you're asked to do it, you can remember what they are. Many of the labs you did had a data table within the lab. You want to be familiar with how to use those. So you might be provided some raw data in a table similar to one that you have already done. And the question might be, okay, go ahead and fill this out for the data in the new table. So be familiar with those, I think would be helpful. And then finally, there will probably be a titration. Titration is one of the main procedures we want to master in a general chemistry course. So I would say make sure you know how to do one of those, and that will be a big part of what you will need to know. That is everything I had to say about preparation for the lab practical. Good luck preparing, everyone. Please feel free to ask if you have any questions.